The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across miles of polished crystal, its walls reaching up toward twin suns that burned bright above Altair Prime. Ancient beings from across the galaxy had gathered here, their strange forms casting long shadows on the gleaming floor. For 3,000 years, these creatures had decided which species could live and which must die. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in chains before the massive tribunal. His uniform was torn and dirty from weeks in alien prisons, but his eyes remained steady as he faced his judges. The council had dragged him here to witness humanity's final judgment, to see the moment when Earth would be marked for destruction. The lead judge was a towering creature made of living crystal, its voice echoing, like breaking glass when it spoke. Species designation human has been found guilty of excessive military expansion, dangerous technological development, and what we term aggressive curiosity. The verdict is final. Your people will be eliminated before they can spread their chaos beyond your solar system. Morrison said nothing. He had expected this outcome from the moment council ships had captured his scout vessel near the edge of human space. Earth had grown too quickly, expanded too boldly, asked too many questions about things the council preferred to keep hidden. Now they would pay the price that countless other species had paid before them. Behind the crystal creature, other council members nodded their approval. There was the architect, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric shell. Beside, it sat the harvester looking like a giant spider made of black metal. These ancient rulers had maintained galactic peace by crushing anyone who might threaten their authority. Commander Lisa Grant watched from the observation deck high above the chamber floor. She had been Morrison's second in command before the capture, and now she was forced to witness this mockery of justice. Her hands clenched into fists as she saw the council's enforcement fleet beginning to move on the massive display screens around the hall. 300 warships, each one the size of a small moon, were preparing to depart for Earth. The aliens had calculated everything perfectly. Human colonies scattered across 17 systems would fall within days. Earth itself would surrender rather than watch billions of people die in orbital bombardment. The Crystal Judge continued its pronouncement. The human species shows all the warning signs of a Class 5 threat. They develop weapons instead of art. They ask questions instead of accepting guidance. They spread across space like a virus, claiming worlds without permission. This cannot be allowed to continue. Morrison finally spoke, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. You're afraid of us. The crystal creature's glow flickered with what might have been anger. We fear nothing, human. We simply maintain order. No, Morrison said, taking a step forward despite his chains. You're terrified that someone might be better than you. That's why you destroy anyone who gets too close to your level of technology. You're not peacekeepers. You're bullies who got scared. The harvester leaned forward, its metal legs scraping against the floor. Your defiance proves our point. Humans cannot be controlled. Therefore, they must be eliminated. High above in the observation deck, Lisa Grant noticed something the council members had missed. A small green light was blinking on her wrist communicator. Someone was listening to this conversation, recording every word. She glanced around carefully and spotted him in the shadows near the back of the deck. Captain Ben Carter crouched behind a maintenance panel, his cloaked reconnaissance ship having delivered him here unseen. His recording equipment was capturing everything the council said, every detail of their attack plan. As the alien fleet began moving toward the chamber exit, he quietly activated his quantum communicator. The message he sent was simple, just 3 words that would mean everything to the people back home. Winter is coming. The Crystal Judge raised one of its many arms, and the chamber fell silent. The enforcement fleet will depart immediately. Human colonies will be eliminated first, to prevent any possibility of escape. Earth will then be given one final chance to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, the planet will be sterilized. Morrison laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the vast space. You really don't know anything about humans, do you? We know enough, the architect replied, its geometric form pulsing with different colors. We know you are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. We know you must be stopped before you become a threat to galactic stability. What you don't know, Morrison said, is that humans have a saying. When someone pushes us, we don't fall down. We push back harder. The council members dismissed his words as the desperate boasting of a defeated enemy. They had heard similar threats from dozens of species over the millennia. None of those species existed anymore. As the enforcement fleet departed Altair Prime, Ben Carter slipped away from the observation deck and made his way back to his hidden ship. The vessel was equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humans had ever developed, rendering it invisible to council sensors. He had been watching and waiting for months, gathering intelligence on the aliens' true capabilities. Now he had what Earth needed most: advance warning and detailed information about the incoming attack. His ship's quantum communicator could send messages across vast distances instantly, bypassing the normal limitations of space travel. Within minutes of the fleet's departure, his warning would reach the hidden command centers on Earth. General Amy Foster received the transmission in her underground facility beneath the Colorado mountains. The massive complex stretched for miles in all directions, housing the most advanced military technology humanity had ever created. She had been expecting this message for years, preparing for the day when the Council would finally move against Earth. She turned to her aide, Colonel Dan Parker, who was studying tactical displays showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. "Activate Shadow Protocol," she said quietly. "Send the signal to all hidden installations. It's time they learned what humans are really capable of." Parker nodded and began entering codes into his console. Across 17 star systems, hidden human outposts received the activation signal. Construction yards that existed enfolded. Space began powering up. Weapon systems that the Council's science couldn't detect came online. The Shadow Fleet, humanity's greatest secret, started emerging from the darkness where it had been waiting. Morrison remained in his chains aboard the Council flagship as it led the enforcement fleet toward Earth. But now he was smiling, because he knew something the aliens didn't. Humans didn't just prepare for war, they prepared for victory. The Council had anticipated Earth's fall, but they were about to discover that they had badly underestimated their prey. The Council's massive enforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their weapons already charging for the destruction they had come to deliver. 300 warships spread across space in perfect formation, each one bristling with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The aliens had made this journey many times before, always arriving to find desperate defenders who knew they could not win. This time appeared no different. Admiral Jake Morrison, still chained in his cell aboard the flagship, watched through a small porthole as human ships moved to meet the invasion. He counted exactly what the Council's intelligence reports had predicted: 200 vessels of various sizes, hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned by the alien armada. Captain Susan Blake commanded the lead human destroyer as it approached the Council fleet. Her ship looked small and fragile next to the enormous alien vessels, like a minnow swimming toward sharks. She opened a communication channel to the Council flagship, her voice carrying across space with exactly the right note of defeated resignation. "This is Captain Blake of the Earth Defense Force," she said. "We have received word of the Council's judgment against humanity. We are prepared to discuss surrender terms to avoid unnecessary bloodshed." The crystal creature that led the Council fleet listened to her words with cold satisfaction. The architect had expected exactly this response. Humans were predictable in their cowardice when faced with overwhelming force. They would beg for mercy, offer to serve as slaves, promise to never again venture beyond their solar system. "Your surrender is accepted," the architect replied. "All human military vessels will power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your homeworld." Blake's destroyer complied, its weapon systems going dark as other human ships followed suit. Across the solar system, defense platforms around Earth's orbital stations shut down their shields and guns. The message was clear: humanity was beaten before the battle had even begun. On Luna Base, Dr. Peter Hayes worked frantically in his laboratory, surrounded by equipment that looked nothing like normal human technology. For 50 years, human scientists had been developing weapons based on principles the Council had never encountered. Quantum entanglement, dark matter manipulation, and dimensional folding were theories that the aliens' ancient science had never explored. Hayes checked his calculations one final time, then activated the quantum communicator that would send the final authorization codes across 17 star systems. Hidden construction yards received the signal and began the process of bringing humanity's greatest secret into normal space. The Shadow Fleet had been built not in the void between worlds, but in the spaces between dimensions. Using technology that bent the very fabric of reality, human engineers had constructed an entire armada in folded space where no sensors could detect it, ships that existed in quantum superposition, weapons that fired through dimensional rifts, and armor that could phase in and out of normal matter. Lieutenant Commander Kelly Brooks sat at her control station on a secret base buried deep within Jupiter's Great Red Spot. The massive storm provided perfect cover for the quantum generators that powered humanity's hidden fleet. As the activation codes arrived, she began the delicate process of bringing the first Shadow Fleet vessels into normal space. The Council forces, meanwhile, were spreading throughout the solar system to begin their occupation. Boarding parties prepared to seize human ships and installations, while survey teams made ready to catalog Earth's resources before the planet's population was eliminated. Everything was proceeding exactly according to their ancient protocols. Captain Ryan Scott commanded the Mars defense grid from a control room buried 3 miles beneath the planet's surface. What the Council believed were simple mining operations were actually the most powerful weapon installations humanity had ever built. Massive railguns stretched through the planet's core, powered by geothermal energy and capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Scott watched his displays as Council ships entered Mars orbit, their crews completely unaware of the weapons pointing at them from below. The aliens had studied human technology for months, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. Every public installation, every visible weapon, every defensive position had been carefully designed to appear primitive and ineffective. Dr. Hayes completed his final preparations and sent a coded message to General Foster on Earth. Shadow Protocol is fully active. All systems are nominal. We are ready to begin the reveal. Foster stood in her underground command center, watching as the Council fleet settled into occupation positions throughout the solar system. The aliens were confident, relaxed, already beginning to catalog human assets for distribution among Council worlds. They had no idea that they were being watched by targeting systems that could strike from dimensions they didn't even know existed. Signal all Shadow Fleet commanders, Foster ordered. Begin Phase 1 materialization in 30 minutes. Let's show these aliens what humans do when someone tries to destroy our home. On the Council flagship, Admiral Morrison continued his act of defeated resignation. His captors had become comfortable around him, no longer seeing him as a threat. They discussed their plans openly in his presence, revealing details about Council military doctrine and the locations of their hidden bases throughout the galaxy. Morrison memorized every word, knowing that this information would be crucial for what came next. The Council had made the mistake of assuming that capturing him meant they had eliminated Earth's military leadership. They didn't understand that human command structures were designed to function even when leaders were captured or killed. The architects studied the tactical displays showing human ships powering down across the solar system. The occupation is proceeding smoothly, it announced to the other Council commanders. Human resistance has collapsed faster than predicted. We may be able to complete the elimination process ahead of schedule. Captain Blake maintained her position near the Council flagship, her ship's crew following the surrender protocols perfectly. But hidden deep within her destroyer's hull, quantum phase generators were quietly coming online. Shadow Fleet technology had been integrated into every human vessel, even the ones that appeared to be surrendering. As the 30-minute countdown approached 0, Blake smiled grimly and opened a channel to all human forces. This is Blake 2, all vessels. Execute Shadow Protocol. Time to show these aliens that humans don't surrender. We evolve. Across the solar system, human ships that had appeared defenseless suddenly began to change. Hull plating shifted to reveal weapons that seemed to bend light around themselves. Engines that had been powered down roared back to life with energies that didn't register on Council sensors. And in the space around Earth, reality itself began to ripple as the Shadow Fleet prepared to emerge from the dimensions where it had been hiding. The Council had come expecting to find sheep ready for slaughter. Instead, they were about to discover that they had walked into a trap set by wolves. The Architect's moment of triumph lasted exactly 47 hours and 12 minutes. The Council fleet had spread throughout Earth's solar system, their commanders already dividing up human resources and planning the systematic destruction of Earth's population. The aliens felt no guilt about what they were doing because they had done it countless times before, to countless other species. Then reality twisted, and everything changed. The first Shadow Fleet vessel materialized directly behind the Council flagship without warning. The USS Liberty, under Captain Helen Davis, emerged from quantum fold space like a ghost becoming solid. One moment there was empty space. The next moment there was a sleek black ship that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Admiral Morrison, still imprisoned in his cell, heard the alarm klaxons start wailing throughout the alien ship. Through his small porthole, he could see the panic spreading across the Council fleet as more human vessels began appearing from nowhere. These weren't the crude ships the aliens had cataloged in their intelligence reports. These were predators, materializing in the middle of a flock of sheep. The Shadow Fleet ships looked nothing like normal human vessels. Their hulls curved in impossible ways, covered with armor that shifted between solid matter and pure energy. Weapons that fired beams of twisted space-time emerged from hidden ports. Engines that moved the ships through folded dimensions left trails of distorted reality in their wake. Captain Davis opened a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, as she delivered humanity's response to the Council's judgment. "This is the Shadow Fleet to all Council vessels. You came to our home uninvited. You threatened our families. You made a serious mistake." The Architect screamed orders at its subordinates, demanding explanations for how human ships could appear inside their formation without being detected. Council sensors showed nothing until the moment the Shadow Fleet vessels materialized, and, even then, the readings made no sense. The human ships seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to target. Colonel Dan Parker's voice joined the communication from his command ship, the USS Constitution. "Council fleet, you have exactly 10 minutes to begin withdrawing from Earth space. After that, we start shooting. And trust me, you don't want to see what our weapons can do." The Council had faced rebellions before, but never anything like this. Species that refused their judgment usually fought with conventional weapons, staging desperate last stands that were quickly crushed by superior firepower. But the Shadow Fleet operated on principles that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about physics. Commander Rachel Stone piloted her ship, the USS Phoenix, through what appeared to be the solid hull of a Council cruiser. Her vessel phased in and out of normal space, passing through enemy armor like it was made of air while delivering devastating strikes to critical systems. The alien ship's shields were useless against weapons that attacked from inside their own defensive perimeter. Dr. Hayes watched from his monitoring station as quantum fold generators throughout the solar system reached full capacity. The true scope of humanity's preparation was finally being revealed. Hidden construction yards in folded space were disgorging thousands of vessels that had been built over decades of secret development. The human fleet that emerged from the quantum folds numbered over 3,000 ships, each one equipped with technology that made Council science look primitive. Earth hadn't been preparing for surrender while the aliens made their plans. Humanity had been preparing for war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The Architect ordered its fleet to open fire, but targeting the Shadow Fleet proved almost impossible. The human ships existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, simultaneously present and absent until they chose to solidify for an attack. When Council weapons did manage to find their targets, the beams passed harmlessly through hulls that briefly became intangible. Captain Tony Miller's destroyer squadron had been waiting in the asteroid belt, their ships disguised as mining platforms, until the moment they powered up their weapon systems. As the Council forces tried to retreat toward the outer system, They found their escape route blocked by even more human vessels that had been hiding in plain sight. Morrison finally spoke to his captors as explosions rocked the Council flagship around them. "You want to know the difference between humans and every other species you've destroyed?" He smiled as another shockwave rattled his cell. "We don't fight fair. We fight to win." The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Council had overwhelming numerical superiority in terms of raw firepower, but their weapons couldn't hit targets that existed partially outside normal space. Meanwhile, Shadow Fleet vessels struck with impunity, their exotic weapons bypassing shields and armor to attack enemy ships from the inside out. Captain Steve Adams commanded a group of assault ships that specialized in close-quarters combat. His vessels would materialize directly next to Council cruisers, extend boarding tubes through dimensional rifts, and deliver strike teams directly onto enemy bridges. The aliens found themselves fighting human soldiers who appeared out of thin air inside their own command centers. Dr. Sarah Mitchell worked alongside Hayes to coordinate the quantum field generators that kept the Shadow Fleet operational. The entire human armada was operating inside a pocket of altered spacetime that humanity had learned to manipulate through decades of theoretical research. The Council's superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't even perceive their enemies properly. The alien commander of a Council battle group sent a desperate message to the architect. "Our weapons are ineffective. The human ships appear to be phasing in and out of normal space. Recommend immediate withdrawal to regroup and analyze their technology." But withdrawal was no longer an option. Shadow Fleet vessels had surrounded the entire Council armada, appearing from quantum fold space in perfect coordination. Every time an alien ship tried to break free from the engagement, it found itself facing fresh human forces that materialized directly in its path. The USS Phoenix, still under Commander Stone's command, executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. The ship folded space around itself, effectively teleporting from one side of the battle to the other, while firing continuously through the dimensional rift it created. The beam cut through 6 Council vessels before the fold space collapsed. Admiral Morrison's guards rushed into his cell as the flagship's hull began buckling under sustained assault. "Your people cannot win," one of them said desperately. "The Council has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We have resources you cannot imagine." Morrison stood up slowly, his chains falling away as human boarding teams cut through the bulkheads around them. "That's your problem right there," he said as armed humans in advanced combat suits entered his cell. "You've been rulers for so long you forgot how to be fighters. We never stopped learning how to fight." The Shadow Fleet's true power wasn't just in their exotic technology or their ability to appear from nowhere. It was in their coordination, their adaptability, and their refusal to accept defeat. Every human commander was making split-second decisions, adapting their tactics to exploit weaknesses in Council formations, turning the aliens' own size against them. As the battle raged across the solar system, one thing became clear. The Council had seriously underestimated their prey. They had come expecting to crush a primitive species, and instead they had walked into a trap set by predators who had been waiting for exactly this moment to reveal themselves. The Council fleet's formation began to collapse as Shadow Fleet vessels continued materializing throughout their ranks. What had started as an organized invasion was rapidly becoming a chaotic nightmare for the aliens. Their commanders screamed contradictory orders while their crews struggled to fight enemies that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The architect realized that conventional tactics would not work against human technology and ordered a general retreat toward the outer edge of the solar system. But as Council ships attempted to disengage from combat, they discovered that escape would not be as simple as they had hoped. Captain Tony Miller's destroyer squadron revealed itself as the fleeing aliens approached the asteroid belt. What the Council had assumed were simple mining platforms suddenly bristled with weapon systems and launched waves of missiles that tracked their targets through folded space. The human ships had been waiting in perfect ambush positions, disguised among the rocks for months. "This is Miller to all Council vessels," his voice carried across the communication channels. "You're not going anywhere until we're done with you. Earth's airspace is now a no-fly zone for uninvited guests." The aliens found themselves trapped between the advancing Shadow Fleet and Miller's blocking force. Panic began spreading through their ranks as they realized that humans had anticipated every aspect of their invasion plan. This wasn't a desperate last stand by a doomed species. It was a carefully orchestrated trap that had been years in the making. Admiral Morrison, now free from his cell thanks to the human boarding teams, made his way to the Council flagship's bridge. The architect turned its crystalline form toward him as he entered, its glow flickering with what might have been fear or rage. "Your species will be completely destroyed for this defiance," the alien commander stated, its voice cracking like breaking glass. "The Council will send fleets that dwarf this one. Every human world will burn." Morrison smiled coldly. "You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you?" He gestured toward the tactical displays that showed Shadow Fleet vessels appearing throughout the system.
"This isn't our full strength. This is just what we keep around the house for uninvited guests." The architect's fury overcame its strategic thinking. If it could not defeat the humans in conventional battle, it would ensure that Earth paid the ultimate price for their resistance.
The alien commander activated the planet killer weapon that had been mounted on the flagship for exactly this purpose. The massive device began charging, drawing power from the ship's main reactors as it prepared to deliver enough energy to crack Earth's crust. The weapon had ended the resistance of dozens of species over the millennia, turning their home worlds into lifeless rocks floating in space. But as the planet killer reached full charge, Morrison's smile grew wider. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "Fire your weapon. I dare you." The architect hesitated, confused by the human's confidence in the face of his planet's destruction. That moment of uncertainty was exactly what General Foster had been waiting for from her command center deep beneath Colorado. "All Shadow Fleet vessels," Foster's voice crackled across the communication channels. "Execute Omega Protocol. Show them why humanity doesn't negotiate with terrorists." The response to her order was immediate and devastating. Every human ship in the system suddenly accelerated directly toward the nearest Council vessel, their hulls beginning to glow with energies that made space itself ripple around them. The aliens watched in horror as the Shadow Fleet appeared to be launching suicide attacks against their formation. Captain Steve Adams led the charge aboard the USS Defiance, his ship aimed directly at the Council flagship. As his vessel approached ramming speed, the quantum phase generators reached critical mass and the ship vanished from normal space, only to rematerialize inside the alien vessel's hull. The Council crew screamed as a human destroyer appeared in their main engineering section, its antimatter charges already armed and counting down. But before the explosives could detonate, the Defiance phased back out of normal space, leaving only the bombs behind in the heart of the enemy ship. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield as Shadow Fleet vessels used their quantum technology to deliver devastating strikes from inside enemy hulls. The Council's superior armor and shielding meant nothing when human ships could simply bypass both by attacking from another dimension. Dr. Sarah Mitchell monitored the quantum field generators as they pushed past their theoretical limits, bending space-time to allow humanity's fleet to operate in ways that violated known physics. The entire engagement was taking place inside a pocket of altered reality that humans had learned to control through decades of secret research. The planet killer weapon on the Council flagship exploded as Adams's antimatter charges reached zero, tearing the massive alien vessel apart from the inside. The architect's crystalline form shattered as the bridge collapsed around it, its final transmission a warning to the Council homeworld about humanity's true capabilities. Captain Helen Davis, commanding the USS Liberty, coordinated the mop-up. Operations as Council ships throughout the system succumbed to the Shadow Fleet's impossible tactics. Her vessels appeared and disappeared like nightmares, striking at enemy weak points before vanishing back into folded space. "This is Davis to all surviving Council vessels," she broadcast. "You have exactly 5 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, we start using the weapons we haven't shown you yet." Dr. Hayes watched from his monitoring station as the quantum cascade reached its peak. The Shadow Fleet's technology was operating at maximum efficiency, allowing human forces to strike from multiple dimensions simultaneously, while remaining effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. The few Council ships that remained intact began broadcasting surrender signals, their commanders finally understanding that they faced an enemy beyond their comprehension. The species they had come to eliminate had developed technologies that made the Council's 3,000-year advantage meaningless. Morrison stood among the wreckage of the flagship's bridge, surveying the destruction that Omega Protocol had wreaked upon the invasion fleet. Bodies of alien crew members lay scattered around him, their forms twisted by the dimensional energies that had torn their ship apart from within. Colonel Dan Parker's voice reached him through the communication system. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender signals from 37 Council vessels. The rest of their fleet has been eliminated. Earth is secure." But Morrison knew that this victory was only the beginning. The Council would not accept defeat easily, and there were hundreds of other species throughout the galaxy that had been oppressed by alien rule for millennia. Humanity's emergence as a galactic power would change everything. Captain Blake, still maintaining her position near the ruins of the Council flagship, opened a channel to the surviving alien vessels. "This is Blake to Council survivors. You came here expecting to find a helpless species ready for extinction. Instead, you found predators who have been waiting for someone to give us an excuse to show our teeth." The battle had lasted less than 18 hours from start to finish. When it ended, the Council's enforcement fleet had been completely destroyed except for a handful of vessels that humans had deliberately allowed to escape. Those survivors would carry word back to the alien homeworld about humanity's true nature and capabilities. As the last Council ships limped away from Earth space, Shadow Fleet vessels began deploying throughout the solar system to establish permanent, defensive positions. The age of hiding in the shadows was over. Humanity had revealed itself as a force that could challenge the galaxy's established order. The Council had anticipated Earth's fall, but they had failed to anticipate humanity's rise. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when apex predators decided to stop hiding among the sheep. The aftermath of the battle stretched across Earth's solar system like a graveyard of alien ambition. Debris from 300 Council warships drifted in slow orbits around the sun, their twisted hulls serving as monuments to the price of underestimating humanity. Only 12 enemy vessels had been allowed to survive, and those carried crews so traumatized by what they had witnessed that many would never speak coherently again. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution, watching as the last Council survivors prepared for their journey home. The aliens moved with the careful precision of beings who had seen their fundamental understanding of the universe shattered in a single day. Their mighty enforcement fleet had been reduced to scattered wreckage by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. The lead surviving vessel was commanded by a creature called the Harvester, one of the few Council members who had retained enough sanity to function after witnessing Omega Protocol in action. The spider-like being appeared on Morrison's communication screen, its metal legs clicking nervously as it spoke. "Admiral Morrison," the Harvester began, its voice distorted by translation. "Protocols. The Council acknowledges that we have miscalculated regarding human capabilities. We request permission to depart your space and return to Altair Prime." Morrison studied the alien commander for a long moment before responding. "Permission granted, but with conditions. You're going to carry a message from Earth to your Council. Masters, tell them that humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist. We're informing the galaxy that Earth is now a major power and will expand our territory as we see fit." The Harvester's form trembled slightly. "The Council will not accept this. There will be retaliation. Fleets beyond anything you have seen will come to destroy your species." "Let them come," Morrison replied calmly. "We'll be ready. And Harvester, make sure your Council understands something important. What you saw here wasn't humanity at full strength. This was just our home defense force. You really don't want to find out what our real military looks like when we're actually trying to hurt someone." General Foster monitored the conversation from her command center, surrounded by displays showing human forces deploying throughout the galaxy. Shadow Fleet vessels were already moving to establish permanent bases in former Council territory, while reconnaissance ships began mapping alien supply lines and military installations. Captain Susan Blake commanded the human task force assigned to escort the surviving council ships safely out of the solar system. Her orders were clear: make sure the aliens reached home alive to deliver humanity's message, but also gather as much intelligence as possible about council infrastructure and defensive capabilities. "This is Blake to escort formation," she announced to her squadron. "Remember, these survivors are our messengers. We want them healthy and coherent when they reach Altair Prime. The galaxy needs to understand exactly what happened here." Dr. Peter Hayes sealed his final report on the Shadow Fleet project, knowing that its success had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. Human technology had proven superior to anything the Council possessed, but more importantly, human tactics and adaptability had overwhelmed enemies with thousands of years more experience. The quantum fold generators that had made Omega Protocol possible were already being replicated for installation on every human ship. Within months, Earth's entire fleet would be capable of the dimensional warfare techniques that had devastated the Council forces. Colonel Dan Parker approached General Foster with updated intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Ma'am, we're receiving communications from 17 different species requesting defensive alliances with Earth. Apparently, word of our victory is spreading faster than the Council survivors can travel." Foster nodded grimly. "They're all terrified that we'll do to them what we did to the Council. Can't say I blame them. Make contact with their representatives, but be clear about our terms. We're not interested in ruling other species, but we won't tolerate any threats against human expansion." The political implications of humanity's victory were already rippling across the galaxy. For 3 millennia, the Council had maintained order through overwhelming force and the threat of species-wide extinction. Now that threat had been neutralized by a species that most aliens had never heard of until recently. Captain Tony Miller's destroyer squadron began patrolling the outer edges of the solar system, their ships now equipped with enhanced quantum sensors that could detect Council stealth technology. Earth would never again be vulnerable to surprise attack, and any alien vessels that approached human space would be met by forces they could neither see nor effectively fight. Admiral Morrison received reports from human colonies throughout the 17 systems Earth had claimed. The scattered outposts that the Council had planned to eliminate as their first targets were now being reinforced by Shadow Fleet technology and turned into forward operating bases for further expansion. On Mars, Captain Ryan Scott supervised the construction of additional planetary defense grids based on the railgun technology that had proven so effective during the battle. Every human world would soon be protected by weapons that could strike targets across entire star systems with near-light-speed projectiles. Dr. Sarah Mitchell continued her research into quantum mechanics and dimensional manipulation, pushing the boundaries of what human technology could accomplish. The victory over the Council had proven that humanity's scientific approach was superior to the aliens' ancient but stagnant knowledge base. The Harvester's ship reached the edge of the solar system and prepared to enter hyperspace for the journey home. As the alien vessel's drives began charging, it sent one final transmission to the human fleet. "Admiral Morrison, the Council will study what happened here. They will find ways to counter your technology. This victory may be temporary." Morrison's response carried across space with quiet confidence. "Harvester, you still don't understand the fundamental difference between humans and every other species you've encountered. We don't just develop new technology and then rest on our achievements. We keep improving, keep adapting, keep pushing forward. By the time your Council figures out how to counter our current capabilities, we'll already be 3 generations ahead of them." The surviving Council ships vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The established order that had ruled the stars for millennia had been challenged and found wanting by a species that most aliens considered primitive. Captain Ben Carter's reconnaissance ship decloaked near the edge of the system and began following the Council survivors home. His mission was to gather intelligence on alien defensive installations and report back on any preparations for retaliation. The Shadow Fleet's next target would be Altair Prime itself, and humanity intended to be ready for whatever they found. There, General Foster stood before a massive display showing the current positions of human forces throughout known space. Red markers indicated Shadow Fleet deployments, while blue showed the locations of species requesting Earth's protection. The map looked like a virus spreading through the galaxy's established power structure. "Colonel Parker," she said quietly, "send a message to all human commanders. Operation Daybreak is now in effect. We're done hiding in the shadows. Time to show the galaxy what humanity looks like when we step into the light." Throughout human space, Shadow Fleet vessels began powering up their quantum drives and preparing for the next phase of humanity's expansion. The Council had come expecting to find sheep ready for slaughter, but instead they had awakened wolves who were now ready to hunt. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had been judged and found wanting by creatures who thought themselves superior. In response, humanity had simply eliminated the authority that dared to judge them and taken their place as the apex predators of known space. The Council had anticipated Earth's fall, but they had failed to anticipate humanity's rise. Now, the stars themselves would learn to fear the species that refused to kneel before anyone,